Look here, I have my own journal. I am so happy to have a physical journal. This setup has helped me for the past 3 years, and it's just like the three things that are important to me, not the to-do list, but what really matters, something that I'm grateful for, something that I'm proud of, something that I dream of, and something that I pray for. Something simple but effective. And I'm just happy to have a physical journal in hopes that it will help somebody no matter their journey. You can find my journal and notebooks at lifewithfrancy.com/shop. The link will be in the description of the episode. Hello and welcome to Life with Francy podcast, a place where you will find all kinds of conversation like mental health, self-love, self-care, trauma, hobbies, and more. With this podcast, I want to create a place where we support one another in business or personal life. Hope you enjoy this episode. Now, let's get the show started. Today's conversation was thanks to Podmatch, an amazing community for podcast hosts and podcast guests to do amazing collaborations like this one. They also offer a lot of tools and resources to help anybody in the podcasting world. On today's episode, I have the pleasure to talk to Diaz, who is a wife, a mother, and author of the best-selling book, Gasping for Air: The Stranglehold of Narcissistic Abuse. Dana has had a lifelong experience with narcissistic abuse, beginning in childhood. Her education in journalism and psychology at Dr. Paul University in Chicago gave her the ability to accurately verbalize and express her narcissistic abuse creates confusion and conflict with victims so that she can help other victims know that they're not alone and better understand their own circumstances. So I can't wait to get this conversation started. Welcome, Dana. Tell us, what is life with you?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Life is a lot different than what it was, as I wrote about it in the book. So life is good now, which I want to start with a positive that, having the childhood circumstances I had, and then unfortunately ending up in a marriage where I was also abused by a narcissist. I am no longer in those any of those toxic relationships. I am remarried to a wonderful, very gentle and patient and understanding man who has helped me through my healing journey, which actually all goes back to the writing. And that's why your podcast, I think is so meaningful, because journaling is so important in so many aspects of life. But my book actually came as a result of journaling, but unfortunately not in a good way. So I was married to a narcissist. He abused me verbally, emotionally, psychologically, sexually, financially. There was physical threats. Never actually made contact, but we're talking crowbars, guns, knives, nothing nice. So it was stressful to say the least. And towards the end of our 25-year marriage, as I talk about in the book, I just started feeling, I had literally a couple dozen symptoms, physical symptoms that were worrisome. I was blacking out a lot. I was having irregular heartbeats. I was short of breath. My hands would go numb. I had a lot of pain in my hands too, to the point where I couldn't even pick up a dryer sheet to do laundry. I couldn't even tear toilet paper off a toilet paper roll, and my bones, everything hurt. And then at one point within a 2-week period, I dropped down about 15 pounds. I was 93 pounds, skeletal. I could barely move, barely breathe. So at that point, doctors ran a bunch of tests. Most doctors didn't know what was wrong with me. One even told me I was a hypochondriac. But fast forward, Mayo Clinic ran a cortisol test. And what that is, it's a stress hormone. It's very similar to adrenaline, except adrenaline comes up when you're in a state of fear or survival. Cortisol comes through your body when you're under extreme stress. but I had had so much cortisol coming through my body at such high rates over decades because of all the abuse I had endured, that it had actually caused my body to think that it had like a cancer or something it had to eradicate. And it depleted um, my white blood cell count to the point where I was having autoimmune issues. I mean, they were saying maybe it's lymphoma, maybe it's MS, maybe it's lupus. Nobody knew what was going on. Turns out I ended up with a rare lung syndrome called upper airway resistance syndrome that the doctor said is like having COPD and fibromyalgia all at the same time. So
Wow.
my entire body was in havoc. But at the point where I was at my worst, the doctor sat me down and said, you are barely functioning. All of your organs and all of your major body systems, your brain, your heart, your muscles, your digestion, everything, your breathing, everything is running at the minimal rate of survival. You are barely alive. And he said, stress really can kill you. And if you don't change something about your life, something's going to happen to you. And you don't want to be told that when you're in your early 40s, that you're on the way to death because people are mistreating you. And I don't think people understand the power of their words, written or verbal, because especially in today's society with all the social media, people are still using words, and those words still have the same impact, whether you say them or, read them or write them. Which brings me to the journaling. I knew my marriage was not functioning. I knew I was being mistreated. It was awful. I'd wanted out for many, many years, but I was afraid because of all the physical threat and the threats of, making sure I would never see my son again. He was creating a narrative with other people outside of our home that I was crazy, and, all this stuff kind of already setting the stage for me to be deemed unfit. And I was not going to fight over sofas or TVs or money. I just wanted my kid and to get out of there. So here I am sick. I had to make a choice. I was trying to do the noble thing and stay for my son and stick it out and try to make it work, but it just wasn't working. And I just had to choose me, but I needed to make sure. So, I was being gaslighted so badly. Anything I said, if I pointed out, but you said this, no, I didn't say that. But you did this. I didn't do that. You're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. When that's happening over 25 years, I mean, I've tried to be self-aware. So I thought, well, I need to make sure that I'm not delusional. I need to make sure my perception of reality isn't that far off. So I started keeping a journal, but I had to be careful because my ex monitored everything. So moms out there will understand this. When your kids come home at the end of the school year with the extra notebooks that you really didn't need to buy, but they still scribbled all over anyway and filled in some of the pages. I took one of those from my son's closet, tore out the pages that had been scribbled on, and I thought, this is going to be my secret journal. It's unsuspecting. So I started writing down all the times that, which was daily, anything that would happen or anything that was said that was very hurtful or nasty or, or whatever it was, the date, the time, and just a brief couple sentences of what happened. And I kept that hidden under the sofa cushion in the basement because I knew he wouldn't go down there. And if he had found it, he would have probably just thought, oh, our son just stuck it under there at some point, and he wouldn't have looked inside of it. Or at least that was my hopeful thinking. So fast forward into 2020, I finally talked to a lawyer. I'm like, you know what? I have been reading my journal, and reading it, I couldn't even believe some of the things. It's almost like when you're in a traumatic situation, you have to put that stuff to the back of your mind just to have the strength to move forward and get through every day. So I'd go back and reread, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't. If anybody else said that their husband said or did these things, I would tell them to get the heck out of it. What am I doing? And I'm just getting sicker. So at that point, I was like, I'm talking to an attorney. I'm done with this. I want out. I just want to be done. I'm not, like I said, I don't want to fight him for anything. I just want out with my kid. It's all I want. So I talked to an attorney. She gives me some things that I need to take care of as far as some assets before we can proceed with filing for divorce. And guess what happens a week later? We go into the shelter in place for COVID. I am now stuck in this house with this man.
Oh,
and and I can't get a divorce. But I kept journaling, and since we weren't working and we were stuck in the house, I actually moved all of my things to our basement. We had like a little family room and laundry room down there. I had a little refrigerator. I used the laundry room sink for, brushing I just avoided him at all costs. But I used that time to take my journal and expand on my stories. Like if I just put a 2 sentence blurb of, a brief summary of what happened, I was typing them out in my computer because I wanted to, while it was still kind of fresh in my memory, kind
mhm.
of write the stories out. Because I also thought during COVID, I was a little nervous being in the house with him. And I thought, well, he wasn't shy about wanting me not to be alive because he said it would make it easier for him. He even emailed me that actually that it would
Wow.
be easier if I was dead. Yeah, this is what I was living with. So I thought, if nothing else, I have the journal and I want a record in my computer. Like I wanted to elaborate on my journal entries so that if something happened, people would know who did what, or at least he would be they usually suspect the spouse first anyway. But it was a really desperate thing that I did, but I'm glad that I did it because once the courts reopened and about 6 months later we were finally divorced. He actually became most violent after the divorce, ironically. It turned into one of those, if I can't have you, nobody else can have you situations. But um once that was all settled and we sold that house, my son and I moved, we're safe, we're good. um I just, it was just really put in my heart that I needed to get these stories out there because I was so isolated by him. I mean, I grew up in Chicago. He moved me 90 miles southwest out to like a middle of nowhere. Nobody even knows. I mean, when we originally moved out, I think we were in a town of like 900 people. Like nobody, I don't even
Wow.
know that there were 900 people there. I think 900 people might have lived there total forever.
Yeah,
But
wow.
we were isolated. So, I mean, I had nobody. He didn't like me having friends. He didn't like me even leaving the house to like go buy the cat food or anything. Like he told me that our house was my prison. He told me that very early on. So once I was out of this relationship and we sold the house and everything, I started looking online, just kind of Googling things. And I discovered what narcissism was. And I thought, oh my gosh, like people, I started listening to podcasts and things. And then there were some women that it's like they were telling my story. And I thought that this is a thing. This is actually something that people are getting away with. But the fact that he could do what he did, not only get away with it, especially when there's domestic violence involved, the police left him at my house. I mean,
Mm.
after he shot a gun outside my bedroom, that's not right. That's not right. He had no business being there. So it just really concerned me. And I thought, I need to create awareness. So I took my journal entries that I had elaborated on, that I had in my computer, I interviewed with many publishers, but got with a publisher that she liked what I wrote, and I really liked her. And we got this book out, and we're working on two more right now because I want to address the abuse I endured as a child, as well as another narcissistic experience that I've had more recently. But I think it's important for people to know that they're not alone. And just to understand what narcissistic abuse looks like from inside the house and outside the house. Because I mean, yeah, my
Mm.
son was in T-ball, he was on the golf team, we went to school events, we went to my husband's family gatherings. We smiled, we had cupcakes, everything was good out in the public because I knew I could not expose him because there would be consequences once we got home. So it's a very tricky thing to navigate when you're in it. But it's also very hard for people to see it, recognize it, and know what to do to help. But anybody who might be listening or might have been in a relationship or know somebody who's been journaling saved me, because even outside of this record, this journal I kept of the awful things, the gaslighting and all these things that were happening, sometimes I would just, because I couldn't say anything to him. If I spoke up to him, I was being disrespectful. I couldn't, and I didn't want another crowbar swung at my head or anything. So I just learned to keep quiet. But it was so important to me. Sometimes I had nobody to call. I had nobody near me. I didn't have you know what I mean? I was alone, and I obviously couldn't talk to my son and vent to him. So I would just take pen to paper, and just freely write, just without moderating my thoughts. And, I'm not going to lie, some of the things that were going through my head were not nice. I was born and raised Catholic. I don't have a mean bone in my body, I don't think. But I mean, I would just freely write whatever I was thinking. And I remember, like, one time he made me so angry because he was drunk and he thought it was okay to take our son out on a motorcycle ride after he'd been drinking heavily. And
Oh
I
my
ran down the
gosh.
driveway screaming like a lunatic, but he
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't stop. And I remember going inside, I was crying, and I had all this anger and frustration and rage in me and worry. And I just started writing, forgive me, God, but I hope something happens to him the next time he goes out on a motorcycle ride by himself, but God, please save my son, and, do something with him, make him walk in the street and get run over by because then I'm starting to think like him, like maybe it would be easier for me if he was dead,
Mm-hmm.
and it's awful because that's not who I am. But when you're in those situations, you're so desperate to be freed. So journaling, just like I said, once I was done putting all my thoughts and my anger and everything and rage on that paper, I would scrunch it up, and I would go back, and we had a fire pit, and I would just burn it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I know some people just rip it up and just, my godmother always says, give it to God. I guess that's what I was doing, was just like, please, this is my thoughts, and I'm sorry, and forgive me, but at least I got it out,
Yeah, it's the release.
out of my heart. Yeah. So it's really important. I mean, naturally, obviously, I went to school for journalism. I'm a writer. I love anything having to do with writing, but journaling's important. And, with my CPTSD and trying to heal from the trauma, I never did do well with talk therapy the traditional way. And I know there's so many other forms, but last year I gave some writing therapy a try. And I
Mm.
am actually really surprised. It's led every day with videos and stuff online. And I know people kind of poo poo on online therapy stuff, but this is actually a human being that you do also have the ability to talk to, through
Mhm.
Zooms or phone calls. But she would give instructions on, like, okay, we're going to talk about this today. This is what I want you to write about, and asking specific questions. And I gotta tell you, it was the most amazing thing to go through. It helped me get through a lot of damage that had been done in my own brain, just even my self-talk to myself and my own self-image. I had let others' words affect me so much. And now I've transformed that into talking more positivity into myself, so that, and it's such a different life when you can wake up smiling instead of
Mhm.
dreading, like, oh, another day, and just say thank you. And part of that writing therapy was also having, like, a gratitude journal every day, just simply writing down 3 things that you're grateful for. And there were some days that honestly I was like, well, my coffee was good today, but I ain't got nothing else. But there were other days that, you have something a little more exciting to be grateful for. But when you have to actually think about what you're grateful for and kind of turn mindset around that way instead of we focus so much on the negative. And I think that's why talk therapy never worked very well for me, because I was setting a time to go bring up stuff that I didn't want to talk about and that triggered me and upset me. And then I'd ruminate about it and be upset about it. And,
Yeah.
so I liked the ability to just be like, at any time, anywhere, I would carry my, journal around, and just, even if it was in the car, like if I'm having a moment or somebody ticked me off, like I'm going to write some stuff down and
No, I
let it
get it.
go. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's really important. I love the idea of journaling for anybody that, has not had success in talk therapy, because it can really be healing.
I love all of that, and I get it because if you see the video, I have a book bag
Yes.
next to me. This is full of journals, and I carry this bag with me everywhere as my coping mechanism. At this time, it's not healthy on how much I want my book bag with me at all times. But I get it because it has been like one of the major tools that I have used in my healing towards my trauma, because that's why I started the podcast, it's just
Right.
talk about it and have the uncomfortable conversations. As you was talking about your story, I was thinking about my bestie who
Mhm.
just left last year, since this
Oh,
is in
thank goodness.
January, who left last year, and she did the same thing. She was tracking down, she was actually recording him because he was
Mm,
more verbally abusive than
yes.
physical abuse, but because she's trying to get full custody,
Yeah.
she had been recording him for like 6 months to a year easily. So
Yeah.
she got all of that. So my heart breaks out to you. Like, I understand. I send you a big hug, and I'm glad that
Oh,
you're in
thank
a
you.
much better place now. So, okay, so you get out of that situation. Then now, how do you deal with that? Or first of all, what is narcissistic abuse?
Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It is any kind of abuse that a narcissist inflicts on you. But what makes it a little bit different is, like, physical abuse is physical, verbal abuse is verbal. Narcissistic abuse encompasses all of it.
Mm,
All of it. So not all victims of narcissistic abuse suffer all of that, but they can suffer any parts of it. We all know what verbal, physical abuse are, emotional, psychological, all those kind of, verbal abuse kind of brings those abuses on. But, any kind of manipulation or gaslighting would be considered under emotional or psychological abuse. But I know financial abuse is a real big one with narcissists. It's one I experienced growing up with my stepfather that abused me. It was actually he is the supreme narcissist. Things like he wouldn't, I mean, he would get outright raging angry if anyone went to the doctor. Nobody was supposed to spend his money, not even for medical purposes. I remember even several years ago, my mother hurt her shoulder very badly in a fall. And he didn't even have insurance on her because he didn't think that he should have to pay for insurance, medical insurance for my mother, who's been married to him. I think they've been married 30 years now. I mean, 40 years. I don't know, a long time, but you know, that's considered financial abuse. And then with my ex-husband, a lot of people experience one or the other side of this financial abuse. Either they don't want you to make more money than them, and they tell you, oh, we had a baby, you got to stay home with our kids now. And, they prevent you from making your own money, because if you don't have a job and you're financially dependent on them, then you have no way to leave them, is the way they're thinking. They think they have you trapped, or vice versa. What my ex did to me was he just decided he wasn't going to work anymore. I mean, we had endless fights about this. He just walked away from a very good career and a lot of money, and said, his words to me were, "It's your turn, mama. Your
mm,
turn to make the money," and literally like turned me into the primary breadwinner. Well, we had a kid, and I wasn't gonna like ruin, like foreclose on our house, or have us lose anything in any way. So yeah, but it was exhausting, to have that put on me when you think you're marrying somebody and you're a team. So those are financial abuses. I also have a lot of people that have reached out to me that have said that their narcissistic partners or spouses do things like they have to bring receipts. Even if they buy a pack of gum, you got to bring the receipt. They want to know exactly where every penny is spent. Another thing they do, which my ex-husband did do, they don't put your name on the checking account. You have no access to their money, but they have access to yours.
Mm.
What's yours is theirs and what's theirs is theirs, but they
Yep.
just don't want you to have any access. So that's financial abuse. And then there's sexual abuse. There's a lot of debate about this, but there's some instances that I share in my book that unfortunately you can be legally married to
Yep.
somebody, but they can still take advantage of your body sexually in ways that you do not consent to. And I would argue with anyone who said that that's not true, because if you don't want to, I don't care who the person is, it should not happen. It's a violation, and it's so shaming and so difficult to deal with that.
Yeah, no is
And
no, no matter who the person is.
yeah. And so that's a difficult one. And I've even heard, I get so many people sharing their stories. I've heard of, for example, one gal shared with me that her partner requires her to perform a specific sexual act with him every single night at a certain time, like clockwork. Otherwise, she's not allowed to go to sleep or have dinner or something. I mean, it's so disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these things, like I said, that narcissists can do. Not everybody experiences all of those things, or we experience them in a different way, but it might actually be one of the most cruel forms of abuse because of all the different things that are happening to a victim all at once. It's a lot to process. Um, so hopefully that clarifies that a little bit. But I want to be clear too, that not all narcissists are abusive. I don't want anyone to hear me saying that, because I know a couple narcissists that I actually love very much. One actually does look as good as she thinks she does. And I mean, God love her. But you know what? My concern is, I say, if somebody is intentionally causing you harm, they are abusive, narcissistic or not. Intentional harm is not right. It is cruel. It's abusive. It's mistreatment.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you say that because a lot of people are like, "Oh, I can't believe that you're with this narcissism, blah blah blah
Right.
blah." But you don't understand, like for some, it might be their heroes,
Yes. And
because
and
it all
that's the
depends.
thing.
Yeah,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
like, that's why I think it's so interesting, because I have already written the prequel to my book, which will
Mm.
discuss like my childhood and kind of what led up. But coming out of an abusive household, it's interesting to me. I never realized it until, now later in life, analyzing everything, that, you know, in my house, my mother was emotionally distant. She hadn't wanted me. I was a teenage pregnancy. She wanted nothing to do with me. She kept me. I was there, but there was no emotional connection. She kept her distance, and then she let her husband abuse me. So I grew up with this kind of skewed idea that love had to be earned. So it kind of made, well, it didn't kind of, it made me codependent. I went
Mm.
out into the world. I couldn't wait to get out of that house, but I didn't realize that I was actually, I fell right into the hands of a narcissist because it was a perfect match. Narcissist like servitude, and here I was willing to do anything
Yep.
for love. He promised me love, and here's the rules. And I tried to follow the rules, but unfortunately the rules would change, or sometimes he changed them on the spot, or he forgot about a rule or made up a new one. I didn't know what was what anymore. It kind of actually does confuse you and make you question everything. But the narcissist and the codependent, it literally the perfect match. It's just that I woke up one day and decided I wanted to be my own person, because I loved myself and respected myself enough as a grown woman with all the things I had to deal with. And it was more important to me, to have a better life. And I knew I deserved that. It just took me a little while to get that. But now my ex is with somebody else. And honestly, I've only been around them one time, only because I had to for one of our son's graduations. And she's lovely. But I could tell she's very submissive. And I thought, people tell me, oh, you should warn her, you should send her I'm like, that their relationship is their business. That is
Yeah.
not my business to step into. And for all I know, they could be very much in love, and she could be very happy with him, and he obviously likes submissive personalities. So that's their business, and if it works for them, then God love them. But it was not for me. I decided I wanted to be better, and not be in that situation anymore.
Yeah, and that's the struggle too, because
Yeah.
there's personalities out there that it could be like it's not even abuse to them, because
Right.
they're just willing to follow every single thing like it's no big deal and
Right.
whatever. So it's just different perspectives, different light, and they do act different with different personalities,
Yes.
because they might get something else from that person that just tame the beast,
Yes.
so it's just
That is
different. So like, no, yeah,
exactly.
my biological father made sure that I had a PhD on every single
Oh,
type of
beautiful.
abuse. So, girl, I understand.
That's funny, because I always say I have a PhD in NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. I don't need to go to school for it. I had the school of hard knocks, 4 decades of it. So
And that's like one of my coaches said to me, because I have so much experience in it and whatever, that's why I call it a PhD, just so people can get that it went dark with my own biological father.
yes,
And I just say that he trained me so I could help others
exactly.
in that matter, because of all the coping mechanism that came afterwards and all
Yes.
the decade that I ruined because I had guilt, shame, and responsibility that
Mhm.
didn't belong to me. So I'm 35. I just started loving myself. Well, by the
Good.
time this airs, I'm 36. Oh my goodness. Anyway,
That's okay. I'll be
yeah,
48 by the time this airs, but
girl,
that's
stop
why,
it.
yeah,
You
but
are
that's,
not.
I know it's awful. December, I'll be 48, but that's why it's so important to me to be like doing this, because I want people to know it's never too late. It's not too late. I don't care how bad your life has been or what you have been through. You can change it. You can change it, and you can be better. I mean, a year ago, I might have still been crying in fetal position in the corner somewhere over a look or a comment. Now I'm good. Like, I can self-regulate a lot better, and things don't trigger me as
Yeah.
badly. But you have to take the responsibility, to do it. And I just really want people to understand it is not too late. I don't care if you're in your 60s, your 70s. I've met women. I have people come to my book signings that, up to their 80s, 80 years old. I even had a 90-year-old, and they've been through stuff. And it's like, it's never too late. It's never too late.
Well, first of all, I was gonna say, girl, you look like late 30s, early
Oh,
40s.
thank you. I'll take it.
That's all I was like,
I'll put that on
what?
my birthday cake.
Um, but how long ago did you leave this relationship?
It was in 2020. So it was during it literally right when the COVID pandemic hit is when I finally wised up, but I had to wait for the courts to reopen and for the shelter in place to be lifted and the courts to get caught up. So by fall of 2020, our divorce went through. But like, I learned the hard way, just because you have a piece of paper saying you're no longer legally married does not mean that relationship is over. He
Mm,
carried it out beyond that. Like I said, it got the worst it had ever been. After that, despite an order of protection and despite a no contact order, despite him having to have his weapons removed from his residence, um, it got really bad. But, as of 2021, we're good. It's been a couple years, but, just being in a safe environment is wondrous on your nervous system, because really that's, people don't realize the mind and body relation is so deep, so
mhm.
when your mind can rest, when you're not in that hostile, intense environment, getting hit left and right. And I mean that, symbolically, hopefully not physically, but, um, you know, once I just call it being safe, then you have the mind space to be free to deal with all of that, but until you're out of it and in that place, it's really hard to separate yourself to where you can kind of see it a little more clearly and a little more objectively.
Mm. Wow. And so how does the book come about? How did you sit down and because I know for my friend, the lawyer was like, okay, you can go through your journals yourself or pay me a fee to go through them. So now she is reliving her
Yes.
trauma by
Oh,
reading the
yeah.
journals and going through it. So can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Did you just see me like exhale
Yeah,
deeply?
I'm sorry. I didn't want
No, it's okay. No topic is off limits with me. Um, that's what I honestly, writing my book helped me through most of the healing process. I just needed a little therapy after it to help with some of the rest of it because it's hard to go through all that. But, you know, going through the publishing process. So the first part of it, just to explain how this works with the healing, when you send we call it a manuscript, but when you send it to the publisher, the first thing they do is what they do, a content evaluation. So somebody at the publisher's company, they read it and they kind of decide like if there's anything in there that doesn't need to be in there, it's not really relevant or adding to the story in any way, or gosh, you mentioned this, but you really didn't go too far into it. You really should, delve deeper into that. So it was that stuff that they wanted me to delve deeper into that they'll send me. Like I have one right here for my next book. It's right next to my computer, 9 pages of just questions like, oh, in this chapter you talk about this, but a reader,
Mm,
I really love to know, like, what was your exact frame? Were you shocked? Were you stunned? Were you surprised? Were you indifferent? Like sometimes when you're writing, you're never gonna write the rough draft. The first draft is never what's actually published. So going through the process of doing the revisions and rewriting chapters and rewriting some of these stories, I did have to go deep. And it's just like therapy. It's just like sitting at therapy and them asking you, well, how did you feel about that? And, when you're trying to find the words to put a reader exactly in that situation with all the sights and sounds and every thought in your mind and every feeling in your body, when you have to put the words to all that, I mean, talk about going deep. That there were days that, I mean, I just couldn't. I just was not in that mind space to do that. Like I knew, okay, I'm on this chapter today, like, or this scene, and it was just too much. I couldn't deal with it that day. There were times that my husband would come home from work and I had just finished writing and I would just be sitting there crying, just crying my eyes out because I just needed to get out everything that I had just written. It just made me so sad because it is like reliving it. So that's why, a lot of people say, oh yeah, I want to write a book about my experiences. I say do it, but you may not, it's hard. It's
mm,
hard. At one point, I actually stopped writing my book altogether for 6 months. I took 6 months off because I needed a break. I needed a break from the doomsday thought, having to go back there. I worked so hard to get out of it. I didn't want to be living it again every single day. But now I'm in a place where I can talk about it without getting upset. I can, very few things about that life really affect me too much anymore because I think I have part of the healing process is accepting what happened, accepting my responsibility as well as the other person's, and however that worked out, forgiving myself for allowing those things to happen and for not getting myself out sooner. I don't want to say anything that's disrespectful to anybody. I don't want anybody to think I'm judging, but because I understand it's not that easy. but there's a lot you go through. And once I processed everything, I can even stand here and say, despite everything, I don't hate my ex. I don't like him, but it's not my place to judge him. He's his own person. Like you just said a few minutes ago, I'm not responsible for his actions. I'm only responsible for mine. And I am taking what happened to me and doing good with it now. Even my priest was like, why are you doing this? Why do you want to go back and relive this and, put this out there? And I joked with him. I said, well, God gave me a big mouth and the ability to write. So I wrote a book and now I'm using my big mouth for good. So um, it's necessary. It's necessary because there still are so many people that were like me that couldn't speak up for themselves and nobody was there to help them and they had nobody to reach out to. So I want to be that person, even if I just impact one or two people and save them from like a disease like I have, or from the toxic relationship, and give them the strength or even just the hope to know that there's a positive side. There is another side after all that, then everything was worth it.
Yeah, that's what I say. That's why I don't want to talk about my story, like relive it all the
Hmm.
time,
Yeah.
but I just don't want the pain to be in vain
Right.
because I went through a lot
Exactly.
that is like, damn, really? I'm just
Yeah.
gonna keep that to myself. Like I didn't
Right.
just I survived that, and now I'm
Yes.
thriving, and now I got the like how I've been explaining it is I had all the negative energy, but now I'm bringing all the positive energy, so now I
Hmm.
want to teach others how can you do that,
Yes.
no matter the situation you can always find. Like just last night I was having a tough conversation in my family dynamic, and he was just bringing all the negative stuff and I was pushing all the positive stuff, so we were clashing because it was too much. So I have to learn too to like step back, because sometimes too much positive perspective or energy can
uh,
bring
I don't
somebody
think
like,
there can
girl,
ever
shut
be too much
up.
positive. No, there can be too much negative. There's never too much positive. I say you do what you're doing. Keep it
Okay,
up. It's eventually it'll be contagious, hopefully.
I'm hoping. Thank you, thank you. I take that. I can talk to you forever. I'm
I
about to
know.
get ready for another interview. So, is there anything else that you would like my listeners to know?
No, I just think that no matter what situation you're in, I know a lot of people, even if they're out of a situation and trying to heal, therapy is not cheap. A lot of people don't have insurance that covers it. I've been in that situation, but journal, 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 even if it's just a random piece of paper, or if it's that beautiful journal you showed us at the beginning of the show. Absolutely, just find a way to express yourself. And if writing isn't your thing, there's art therapy, there's music therapy, there's, just make sure you have a release.
Thank you. And yeah, anything in crafts for real. You go to
Yeah.
Michael's, Joann's,
Yes.
Hobby Lobby, anything in there will help you get through whatever hard time you're
Exactly.
going through. It's all to bring the inner child in, because
Yes.
I don't know about you, but for me, it was stuff that I was missing as a child. Like I just went into a podcast interview not too long ago, and she was like, "What would you tell your 9-year-old self?" And I was like, "Girl, I talk to her all the time because she's like the most active out of all the
Oh,
ages and stuff." But it was because she was going through a lot, and I was
yeah.
just like that. Keep playing with the Barbies
Yeah.
and keep journaling, because I had stopped. So I was just like, keep journaling, because that's just gonna help you out so much.
Hmm.
And now I'm allowing myself to be a child, like I wasn't able to be a child when I was a child.
Exactly. That's what I tell people, honestly, the way back to yourself, whether it's your inner child or even your adult self, is just to indulge your little whims. For me, it was, I love the color red. It's my favorite color, so I'll paint my nails red. I want butter pecan ice cream for dinner. So guess what I had for dinner last night? I had a whole pint of butter pecan ice cream and it was good. I probably should have eaten food, but you know what? Indulging your little whims. It's simple. It's not hard. but it makes you feel so happy inside. And so whatever you can do to nurture yourself, it just makes life so much brighter.
I love it. I can talk to
Oh.
you forever. Where can my listeners find you and your book?
Absolutely. Yes. My book is available anywhere online where books are sold. Most people love Amazon. We all order from Amazon. So it's an ebook or print format on Amazon or anywhere else. You can also go to my website, danasdiaz.com. There is a link to buy the book on there. I also have a blog. All kinds of information on there and resources, and you can contact me through there. Um, Facebook, Instagram, Dana S. Diaz author. Reach out to me. I love to hear from everybody. Follow me, like my pages. I post content every day. So hopefully anybody that's out there that wants to reach out or wants more information about narcissistic
Mhm.
abuse or healing, they'll find it somewhere on one of those avenues.
Well, thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks, that means a lot. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Life with Francie podcast. Hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. You can find my show in all major platforms as well as my YouTube channel. On the show notes, you will find the links for my guests as well as mine. And an awesome way to support is to follow, like, subscribe, depending on the app. And if you like to help the show, you can leave a review to help others find it. So thank you so much. Hope you have a blessed day. Bye bye.